this is the fabulous Dr. Welby, Dr. Melissa Welby, who has been extremely patient in me trying to figure out how to use this specific platform for the first time to go live on the PD Mom page. So thank you guys all for watching those little tidbits. And I'll apologize for the words that I said behind closed doors.
Hopefully it was not live for you then.
I hope so too. But this is too important of a topic for us to not continue to keep trying. So this has literally been hours in the making. And so we're finally here. And we're going to talk about it, right? You got lots to say about this stuff. I know I have lots to say about it, but I really, really, really want to hear what you have to say about it, because you have such great insight into what this whole pandemic and the fear and the stress that comes along with it is doing to all of us, but also to our kids. And as parents, which is most of my followers are parents. So, you know, they're not only concerned about how to deal with it themselves, but even more so, as most of us are, concerned about how to talk to our kids and making sure that our kids are not, you know, stressed and dealing with it in a way that can be long lasting. So what do you think? What are some of the important points that we need to talk about today?
I mean, I think that everyone needs to really look at their own anxiety first. So as a parent, you know, kind of keeping tabs on how am I handling this, and, you know, am I obsessing about it and watching the news every moment I'm home, and like talking on the phone to my family, you know, do you have any symptoms? Are you coughing? You have a cold? You know, the panic and the overwhelm. I mean, this is really scary, and we all get that. We're scared. None of us want to have this going on. It's, you know, when things are unpredictable, you know, we don't have a framework around them, and it just accentuates the fear and the anxiety. And I think that people underestimate sometimes how much their kids pick up on that and are listening. They are taking their lead from us, and, you know, they have brains that aren't, you know, able to really process the information in the way that we're capable of processing it. And so, you know, I just want to start out by saying, you know, think about, even if you're not talking about it in front of your kids, kind of what is your overall state right now, okay? And so if you kind of are aware of that, then I think it's easier to do the next step, how to talk to your kids. Because if you're in a panic, then that's not going to be a productive conversation. Or it's not going to be productive in the sense of kind of putting a framework and reminding the kids that, you know, we are, you know, there are many people that are working to contain, and, you know, that what we're doing as a family to keep ourselves and you and the people that you love safe. And so I would, I think the next thing that I see is that parents want to make it better immediately, right? And so a lot of us will reactively or you know, automatically offer reassurance. It's okay. It's going to be fine. You're not going to get sick. It's you know, oh, that, you know, that's only for, you know, older people. I mean, sure, some of, you know, who might get sick is true, but you know, this is a time where those reassurances aren't going to help. They see it's not normal. They're not in school. They go to the grocery store with you. There's nothing on the shelf. Like, I mean, you know, we're rationing toilet paper. Like, this is not normal times. So I don't think we need to pretend it is. I think that what we need to do is have conversations with our children, and these will depend on what age they are. And so obviously if somebody is 4, we're going to have a very different conversation than if they're 14. And so, when we talk about, what to say, it really depends on what age we're dealing with. But I think, kids have overheard us, or they've overheard teachers or friends. Friends have overheard their parents and, said things. So the first step is ask your kids what they know. What have they heard?
Yeah. And that actually stands true. I mean, it's definitely true for this, but it stands true for everything. It's a great way to start conversations with your kid, to see where they're at, what they know, what they've heard, so that you can know whether you have to start unteasing, like taking out some of the stuff that they learn that might be wrong, and really give you a better idea of what level they're at with respect to their knowledge or their concern.
Right. I was actually, my 12-year-old, I was talking to about everything. And so, or she was telling me all the things that she had heard from her friends. And, this was really sophisticated facts, high level adult facts. And then I started asking her more just about, the basics, like, oh, so what are the recommendations and why do we have to wash our hands? And, it was, there was no depth to the knowledge. And I thought it was such a great way. If I just assumed she understood everything because she was, telling me, it can live on a certain, that sort of thing, then I would have missed the real the way to connect with her and help her feel calm about, this is why we wash our hands, and this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing social distancing. And so really not even just taking it at the superficial level of what they know, but asking them a lot of questions to see what they understand, instead of just having them repeat back what they've heard.
Yeah. And they're great at that. They're great at repeating what they've heard on the news or by teachers, and making it sound like they know what they're talking about, when they really don't understand why they're saying the things that they're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So after asking them what they know and where they're at, how deep should we get into the details of this? Because I'm getting a lot of questions from parents about, do I explain the severity of this and the possibilities, the long-term possibilities, or do I keep it very kind of now and in the present time, and we don't really know what would happen? And, there's a lot of questions about how detailed to get.
Right. And I think that also really depends on the age. I think that it's impossible to not get detailed with preteen and teen kids. And you know what? Some younger, right? So even, my 10-year or 9-year-old, she's going to want some details. I don't have to go in the same level as the older kids, but if my child was 5, it would be much less details, more higher level kind of, this is going on, it's really serious, and we're doing what we can to keep everybody safe sort of details. But with an older child, I mean, we are asking them to not see their friends. Like, this is like the world is ending to them. This is terrible. And you better get buy-in, right, as to why we would ask them, God forbid, to not see their friends. And so I think, it also depends on your child, right? Some children are really anxious and really sensitive. And for those children, you're going to say it in a different way. Whereas somebody, I think people probably have a good sense of what their child can handle. But, I feel like answering questions in detail is okay as long as they're kind of older and they can comprehend it. And it's an open conversation where I'm going to watch. If you are getting really anxious and fearful and, clingy, then I'm like, okay, this is too much and I need to do some more reassurance not false reassurance, but
Yeah. So, and I think too that, and you can let me know what you think about this, but when we're talking about the severity of something like this and the possibilities of what can happen, that sometimes it can help to also make sure that you're spending just as much time talking about what we're doing to prevent that and what certain people are doing to help those that do get it. So to not necessarily only talk about the concerning parts and the fearful parts and the worst parts of the situation, but also to say, this is what we can do. We can do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to help keep us as safe as possible. And also, this is what other people are doing. This is what physicians are doing. This is what scientists are doing. This is what community members are doing to make sure that we all stay as healthy as possible, to balance it out a little bit so that they're not only thinking about the bad parts and they're knowing that we're really working hard to make sure that all those bad things that they might be hearing aren't necessarily going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the way to reassure. That's not a false reassurance, right? That is reassuring and saying, there are really, really, really smart and capable and dedicated people that are, working to, make this go away and help people that get sick. And there are lots of wonderful that's the kind of reassurance that I think is appropriate, not that it'll never happen. And then I also think it's really comforting to them to sort of know that they have a hand in helping. Like I have things that I can do, like wash my hands, that are going to help protect me and help protect others.
Yeah. And so what do you say to the parents who have kids who say, can I get this? Or can you get this? And will you get sick? Or especially because we're hearing so much about how older people are more susceptible. My own daughter, who's 9 years old, and we've had a lot of detailed conversations about this because I do work in the ER. So it's kind of rare and it's part of our lives right now. And so she was very concerned about how, well, what I keep hearing is that older people get it, and I don't want, Nana and Opa and Grandma and Grandpa to get sick, and that became her concern. So I know that there are some parents that are saying, oh, it's not going to happen to them. Your grandma will be fine. Your grandpa will be fine. Is that a good idea to just say a blanket statement of how it's not going to happen and they'll be fine?
Yeah, I would say that would fall under the false reassurances, and that they might be, because are they really going to believe you? Right? Really deep down, they might want to believe you, and they might say, oh, thank goodness, I'm so glad Grandma can't get it. But then they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't really make sense. Like, why could I get it and Grandma can't? So I think that we want to reassure in a healthy way or a helpful way too, and say, we are doing everything we can. And you know what? Grandma is doing everything she can. She is washing her hands. She is, staying home to decrease risk. And, we are all really keeping our bodies healthy and getting enough sleep and, really emphasizing the things that we can do, and not saying that, no one will get sick. I think it's okay to say, when they're worried about parents getting sick too, like, mommy is very healthy, and you know what, I am doing everything I can to prevent this from happening. But, I believe that if I get sick, it's not going to be fun, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's okay that, but I wouldn't lie. And I don't feel like
Yeah.
that's a lie.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to be on the opposite end of the spectrum of lying. Like I am very real, developmentally appropriately
Yeah,
real, but I'm very real. And I think because they know way more than what we think they
totally.
know, and
Absolutely.
way more than we want them to know sometimes. Sometimes we don't want them to know certain details and they know it before we even realize it. So I think it's super important to be honest with some reassurance, but to not necessarily sugarcoat things because that doesn't always make them feel better. Because my
Right.
concern too is that if they think they're not getting real answers from you, are they going to keep coming to you with answers or are they going to start asking other people? You know,
Absolutely.
and
Right.
I want them to go to their parents for the answers and to feel confident that they're going to get realistic and true answers and advice from their parents.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
And so what advice do you have for the parents themselves that might be very stressed and have a significant amount of anxiety over this themselves? What advice do you have to not let that kind of spill over to the rest of the family, especially to the kids?
Yeah, that's a great question because again, that's how I started in that it really starts with us, right? So if our anxiety is just really spilling out everywhere, we're not going to be able to contain it in a way that, we can be a support to our kids and, be present for them. So I think that, I obviously as a psychiatrist see lots of people with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I think, really hard for people to not have all of the answers. And so what happens, I think, for some people, they just look and watch every every single news show that they can watch, and
Mm-hmm.
they're obsessively reading data and statistics, and um, I think that the way to handle this is, um, okay, so you have one source, right? So go to the CDC, have
Mm-hmm.
that be your source, and read once a day. I mean, sure, there might be one more positive case that they're announcing in the news for your town, but is that going to matter by the next morning? So if you immerse yourself in it the whole day, you're not going to have any ability to calm yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
same thing that you're saying to your kids, we're doing what we can. I'm washing my hands. I'm sterilizing the doorknobs. I'm doing the things that I can to prevent transmission, and to keep myself safe. You've got to believe that too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that sleep is essential. Exercise. Obviously, we can't go to the gyms right now, but we can
Yes.
go for a walk outside. We can go for a
Sure.
run outside. We can do jumping jacks in our house. Like, moving your body, distracting yourself, watching a funny movie, dancing to loud music, like just doing things that are stress relievers, to balance that out. I mean, think about it as a seesaw, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the stress level is really getting us so out of whack, what can we do on that other side to bring us back to even?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a sprint. This is going to feel like a marathon right now. And so we have to maintain our ability to be calm. And so grounding exercises, mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing. I mean, there's a million, things that will help. I have a ton of them on my resource page.
Great.
Uh, I have a PDF I put together on 48 resources to deal with anxiety. There are so many things out there, but parents have to take care of themselves really
Mm-hmm.
first so that they can model their reaction.
Yeah. It's very easy to get pulled into the rabbit hole of all of this and be sucked in. And I feel like the isolation that some people might be feeling from,
Mhm.
the social distancing that we're really hoping everybody does do, because we really do need
Right.
people to do the social distancing. But for some people, that can actually make things worse. Um,
Yes.
and so I think it's important for you guys out there to realize too that this is something that might not be easy to do. It's something that you have to be active in doing, active in making sure that you're taking these steps, not only for yourself, but for your kids and your family as a whole,
Mhm.
because the whole family is kind of feeding off of each other. So it's super, super important. And then I also have to just throw something out there too. It's just saying that if you're really getting to a point where you're so anxious, or you're finding that you're depressed, or
Mhm.
having any kind of symptoms that are making you feel like you need some help, reach out. There's tons of not only primary care physicians, but psychiatrists and just physicians in general that are
Mhm.
making sure that they have telemedicine services available right now, not only just for basic medical care, but also for psychiatric medical care
Right.
and just for somebody to be able to
Absolutely.
talk to. Also, make sure you're reaching out to your friends, not only for yourself, but for them, right? I think that's super important too. There's lots of other ways to reach out, like Skype or
Right.
FaceTime, or even just calling and actually speaking on the phone. I mean, do people do that anymore? I don't know.
They do now, actually. They do.
Exactly. This may very well be a little bit of a trip back
Right.
in time where we start
Right.
doing, like the things that we used to do.
Right.
Um, But I do think that they should be looking at websites like yours that have a significant number of resources of things that they can do not only for themselves, but for their family. And all of these things too can go for the kids too. Like kids can meditate, kids can,
Absolutely. Right.
kids, there's a lot of things that we think
Mhm.
are good for adults for anxiety and stress, that can actually carry over pretty well for kids. And what better way to
Absolutely.
do it than as a family and as a whole, right?
Right. And I was saying to my family, my kids, this is not, none of us want to be in this position,
Mhm.
but we have some opportunities right now too. We can go for a run together, or we can, just do things differently, play a game. Like it's not, you know, kind of disconnecting from the TV and social media. I
Mhm.
think, although I like that all the time, I think is essential right now,
I do
because
too.
when the kids are online talking to their friends or whatever, they are still like the friend, all these snaps and, it's just, they don't have any space from it. And,
Mhm.
I think this is a side point, but make sure to also remind your kids that even if somebody is an influencer, it doesn't mean that they're giving you accurate information.
Yes.
They are a
Huge
kid
point.
with a lot of followers. That doesn't mean they're a physician or they're a scientist. And so that kids don't discern necessarily what's accurate and what's not. And it's
Mhm.
important to remind them of that really essential point.
Yeah. I actually think that that goes for adults too. I
Yes.
think, I mean, we all know that the amount of misinformation and disinformation on social
Mhm.
media is huge. I mean, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. Um,
Right.
and if anything's going to cause anxiety, a lot of times that's what it is. All of
Right.
these ridiculous and sensational stories that are
Right.
clickbait, like just really wanting people to click on it and read, that's what's going to cause the most stress. So I think that's another huge point for people, not only for themselves in general, but also use this as a time to teach your kids and yourself, if need be,
Mhm.
how to be able to tell true information versus false information,
Mhm.
and what sources are reputable and which sources aren't, and to make sure that you're not being sucked into those dubious sources, because that can really do some damage. Some of
Absolutely.
that stuff would scare anybody to death.
Terrible. Yeah. Yeah. It's terrible. That's why I say, if you're going to limit your source, have it be the CDC, right? It's not going to be presented in a sensational way or
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of dry and factual.
Right, right. Sorry, the audio just went crazy for a minute. I don't know if anyone else heard that, but so
The lovely part of being live.
Right, exactly. It actually was so it erased my brain. I wasn't sure what I was about to say. I can't remember now.
Well, let's just, I think we covered a lot. So is there anything that you think that's important to say that we didn't cover that parents might need to know? And just for you guys watching too, I'll remind you that if you pop questions down below, we'll both keep an eye on it and we'll answer some questions. And, if there's specific enough questions, we could always consider coming back on. But ask those questions below and we'll keep an eye on it. And hopefully we can expand on some of the things that we already spoke about. But anything specific that you can think of that we didn't mention?
I think I would just remind people that kids show their anxiety in different ways sometimes. And so, say your child who's generally, semi-rational is really melting down and, just being difficult and argumentative and, just kind of hysterical sometimes. Like, remember what's going on in their brain, right? They have been taken away from school, their structure, they sort of calm themselves by having this framework. So, maybe they are not sleeping as well, or they're asking to, sit on your lap and, which is great. But, if they're doing things that are different, even if they're unpleasant, like really being argumentative, it might just all be their anxiety. They're stressed. They're really worried. Of course, kids are worried if they're going to get sick, but even more so, they're terrified their parents are going to get sick. And
Absolutely.
so, right, if they hear you saying anything about getting sick, it's just going to really just put them over the edge in terms of their ability to calm themselves and feel safe.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to know too that kids often will, when they're having anxiety, oftentimes they have physical complaints.
Yes.
So kids will often complain of stomach aches, headaches. They will sometimes even have significant issues like diarrhea.
Absolutely.
So, which for some parents who might already be anxious might then kind of feed into the whole, oh my gosh, is my kid actually sick now? So just, you have to look at it in the big picture and look at it with respect to your own child's personality, their temperament, and how they usually react to stressful situations, and then look at any symptoms they might have accordingly and kind of look at the whole picture. But by all means, if there's ever any concern or question, then call your doctor. I mean, I know most of us are definitely willing to talk about this kind of stuff and make sure that there's nothing else going on. But just know that kids absolutely can present with physical symptoms that can appear to be illness-like when it's really due to anxiety, stress, depression, and several other issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would also add that even though the framework of school is gone, if there is some structure that can be set up for kids, now sometimes it can't, but even if it's some routine that you build in, like, before mom goes to work, we are going to do this every morning, if you're still going to work like many of us are, Or, when I get home at night, this is what we're going to do. Like, we're going to put a framework around the day, and, this is our new routine. Like, any sort of ritual, I think, that can happen and they can expect will sort of help them to know that you're there and, they're going to be okay type.
Yeah.
So that
Perfect. All of this is so important because I just recently did a post today about being real in my own world as a physician and a mom, and it's scary. This is a pretty scary situation. Those of us who are here now and adults, we have not lived through a situation like this.
Right.
We have not, we've never dealt with it. So it can be really scary. So I think support and talking about it and things like this where, us physicians get together and talk about different aspects of it is super important because we're kind of learning as we go as well. But we're lucky in that we have the background that some people don't have. So I thank you for being willing to assist and help and give your expertise to this situation. And I will, again, to you guys who are watching, I'll make sure that I pop Dr. Welby's, all of her social media platforms and also her website down there so that you can go and check out all of the resources she has because she's got tons of resources. Check out her blog too because she writes about some really, really helpful stuff. And if you have questions, pop them down and we will take a look. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Welby, for coming and joining us.
Stay safe. Yes, everybody stay safe and social distance.
Yes, it's all about social distance at this point. If you can, please do it, and you'll see me say it time and time again. This is not a joke. Please just do it. We'll try and bring as much as we can to you on your couches, and we can talk about that stuff there, but stay home when you can. Have your kids stay home when they can, and just do what you can to be the least amount of stress and the least amount of anxiety that you can have for your kids' sake too. Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Okay.
Bye.